अथ तृतीयमुण्डके प्रथमः खण्डः। द्वौ सुपर्णासयुजा सखाया समानं वृक्षं परिशश्वजाते तयोरन्यः पिप्पलं स्वाद्वत्ति अनश्नन्नन्यो अभिचाकशीति समाने वृक्षे पुरुषो निमग्नः अनीशया शोचति मुह्यमानः जुष्टं यदा पश्यत्यन्यमीशम् अस्य महिमानमिति वीतशोकः यदा पश्यते रुक्मवर्णं कर्तारमीशं पुरुषं ब्रह्मयोनिं तदा विद्वान् पुण्यपापे विधूय निरञ्जनः परमं साम्यमुपैति प्राणो येष यः सर्वभूतैर्विभाति विजानन् विद्वान् भवतेनातिवादी आत्मक्रीड आत्मरतिः क्रियावान् एष ब्रह्मविदां वरिष्ठः सत्येन लभ्यस्तपसा येष आत्मा सम्यक् ज्ञानेन ब्रह्मचर्येण नित्यम् अन्तःशरीरे ज्योतिर्मयो हि शुभ्रः यं पश्यन्ति यतयः क्षीणदोषाः सत्यमेव जयते नानृतम् सत्येन पन्था विततो देवयानः येनाक्रमन्त्रिषयो व्याप्तकामाः यत्र तत्सत्यस्य परमं निधानं बृहच्च तद्दिव्यमचिन्त्यरूपं सूक्ष्माच्च तत्सूक्ष्मतरं विभाति दूरात् सुदूरे तदिहान्तिके च पश्यत्स्विहैव निहितं गुहायां न चक्षुषा गृह्यते नापि वाचा नान्यैर्देवैस्तपसा कर्मणा वा ज्ञानप्रसादेन विशुद्धसत्त्वः ततस्तु तं पश्यते निष्कलं ध्यायमानः। So we are on the 8th verse, 8th mantra in the first section of chapter 3. Chapter 3, section 1, mantra number 8. Na chakshusha gryhyate napi vacha. So that the self cannot be perceived or described by the words, nor perceived by the eyes and senses, nor revealed by the rituals and penance. Up to this we have discussed. Then we have started our discussion on the main theme of this mantra. When the understanding becomes calm and refined, then alone in meditation one realizes Him, the Absolute. Now, in the discussion of this point, we have covered 5, 6, para number 5, para number 6, and this is just a starting. 6th onward is the commentary on the understanding, when understanding becomes refined, etc. Jnana prasadena vishuddha sattvaha. This is going on till the end, till the 9th para. This is a very important phrasing. Jnana prakashena vishuddha sattvaha tam pashyati dhyayamanaha tam atmanam pashyate. The one in meditation can see the self when his understanding becomes, here it is said, understanding becomes calm and refined. So this was our main concern of discussion. The understanding becomes calm and refined. We live the outer world, in fact, from our own within. And this lively world without is experienced through the mind and intellect, the emotional aspect and the rational aspect. Both uh, try to involve in this and gain the individual gains the experience of the outer world. So these two are the main media through which we live the outer world and experience, interact with it and experience. Now, this being the case, any lopsided absorption or understanding will not be valid or will not give him a full satisfaction of the experience. So if it is just if he tries to evaluate only by a rational aspect in him, it will be incomplete. Or otherwise also if he does it with only the emotional aspect, it will not have the satisfaction for having completely experienced. Similarly here, the understanding, jnana prasadena vishuddha tattvaha. When the understanding in the intellect is coupled with, associated with the sattvic or the purity, sattva or the purity of the mind. So mind and intellect both are involved in this. They are basically integrated, but the aspects are being concerned here. Here the understanding is reached by the intellect, and whatever is understood by the intellect has to be experienced by the mind. And if this is so, then in what disposition of mind it can be experienced is the next concern. So here it is said the mind which is Vishuddha Sattva, which is extremely pure. The mind that is extremely pure. And in order to comment on this purity of the mind, the first statement made is here, in the sixth paragraph. The second statement is the purity of the mind is the most important factor in this great achievement. The great achievement is the understanding of the selfhood, self, being experienced through the mind. So the understanding of the intellect is being experienced through the mind. So that both are involved and then the experience becomes complete. So in this, the purity of the mind is the most important factor. This is the first aspect. And the first statement here in the sixth para, hence it is that the Shruti says, when the understanding becomes calm and refined. Hence, when it is said, the reasoning is already given in the fifth paragraph. What the meditation is. Now here, in the fifth para, the important statement is that a meditation only removes veil over the self, and the self is realized by itself in its own light. This was important statement we have discussed. Here, I would like to say something more about this meditation aspect. We have appreciated definition of meditation by Swamiji earlier as it is the discipline of thinking in one line of thought at the exclusion of all the dissimilar lines of thinking. meditation is a discipline in which one meditates on one line of thinking at the exclusion of all the dissimilar lines of thinking. So this is an exclusive meditation without any thought of the opposite nature being allowed to interfere or disturb. This ability or this discipline is called meditation. Now this definition is one that we have already read, discussed, etc. And now here we come across the definition of meditation as meditation only removes the veil over the self and the self is realized by itself. So a removal of the veil covering the self is actually, in other words, it is a relentless assault on all the negativities of our mind. Meditation is a relentless assault on all the negativities of our mind. When these negativities are completely destroyed, root and branch, then the mind that is left over is Vishuddha Sattva. Then it becomes pure. So here the definition of my meditation is different. Here it is said that it is an assault on the negativities. Therefore, we have to here pause a little and see the appropriateness of definition and application. Which definition is applied to what? We have already seen that a meditation is a very common term used, and we can mean as upasana, the one, and the other one as dhyanam. So the deeper meditation, contemplation is also meant by the term meditation, is a very common term. Some people call it meditation. It is not getting mad. That is a different way of getting mad with it. If you really get mad with what the subject matter, then you are almost on the main path. But here, meditation as upasana is our ability to meditate upon our chosen deity, its nature, its qualities, whatever we, according to the nature of the deity, to exclusively meditate upon that, and at the exclusion of all the dissimilar thoughts related to the world and the ego. So this is called upasana. This upasana will continue till we realize that my deity of worship is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. When I come to realize about my deity like this, then our upasana is over. Now the problem is we have a conclusive understanding about our deity, and this is very useful, that the Lord is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent in the right sequence. That is about the Lord. Now, about the individual, the Lord resides in the hearts of all. Therefore, the individual also must experience the presence of the Lord in his heart. Now, for this, the meditation that is used is of the second type. Here, it is an attack on all the negativities in our mind and make the mind totally free from all sense of negativity. There is all modifications of the mind, all vikaras of the mind. We must be free from that. So this we will be discussing in the following paragraphs in detail. But here incidentally, we have seen the difference in definition that we have come across, and we have allocated to the right perspective and also the purpose. So meditation as upasana is a discipline of meditating on one line of thinking at the exclusion of all the dissimilar lines of thinking. Whereas the meditation for the realization of the self after understanding him intellectually, paroksha jnanam, it is indirect knowledge of the self or intellectual knowledge of the self. Having gained the intellectual knowledge of the self, and that knowledge is free from doubts and perversions, then to realize what I intellectually understood, to experience that and realize, I need the mind as the medium. And to make the mind as a fit medium for my experience or realization of the self, mind needs to be extremely pure. Extremely pure is considered here as Vishuddha. V stands for Vishesha. It is not ordinarily refined. Swamiji has used the term refined, very ordinary term, very popular in our general public. So this refined is a sense, fine and refined. So this kind of term is used here. So when the understanding becomes calm and refined, meaning when the understanding at the level of intellect regarding the nature of the self, when that is received by the mind, accepted by the mind, that is pure, refined, etc. Then in the meditation, the seeker realizes the self. So this is a very, very important thing, and we have found that in in Tapovan Shatakam, the last verse, Tejomayam Divyam Ameya Shaktim, Sanatanam Shantam Anamayam Cha, etc. All that is there. This word is again used. Advaitam Ascharya Achintya Rupam, Paratparam Nityam Anantamadyam, Jnana Prakashena Vishuddha Sattvo, Yam Pashyati Swatmani Chintyamanam. The same version is taken, and last time we have seen that the study, chanting, and understanding the meaning of Tapovan Shatakam is a complete study of the Upanishads in essence. Within 6 verses, the composer has covered the entire essential understanding of the Upanishad. And the goal of the Upanishad is to indicate the Brahman, the ultimate truth. Therefore, Swami Tapovan Maharaj is considered as Brahman, and his praise is made in the language of the Upanishads. Therefore, incidentally, the one who chants this with devotion will be introduced to the essentials of Upanishadic understanding about Brahman, and that will help him in his sadhana. So this idea was discussed last time. Now we are proceeding to in the 6th para. We have already seen the purity of the mind is the most important factor for this great achievement. The self-realization is the great achievement. There is nothing greater than that. And for this great achievement made by the practice of meditation is what is being discussed here. And when it will be successful, when the achievement is gained, only when the understanding at the intellectual level is well received by the mind, which is extremely pure, here it is, and refined. So this idea is being discussed here. Now, in the end of the 6th paragraph, it is said here what is defined here, that kind of meditation that we have, etc., is being defined here. How it is difficult. The purity of the And hence the emphasis on Vishuddha Sattva during the endless pilgrimage of each individual during the travel through the womb of time-space causality, confusion in the lower equipment such as inert stones, living vegetables, knowing animals, and thinking man, he, the seeker, has gained in his inner composition thick layers of animalism and instinct. These are the two important words, the animalism and instinct. So here, I think Praveen has last time asked the question about this, and we have discussed also to some extent. So here, first thing is that all the creatures are, or each individual is manifest through the triad of time, space, and causality. Time, space, and causality. It means that he is born in time at a given space, place, and causality, he will be handled with the sheer law of cause and effect. Causality, causation is the law, and cause and effect is the law that is governing the entire creation. Nothing just happens, it is cause. And then, with reference to this, we will understand what is the cause of the cause, or what is the cause that is uncaused. In other way, the last one is the cause with reference to something else ahead, but itself is not caused. It is not the effect of anyone, and that is Brahman, the uncaused cause. So this kind of causation, even in ordinary parlance, if we can see in the world also, in our interactions with the world, our effects that we get, the results that we get, are bound by the laws that are governing the cause and effect. So this particular idea is suggested that we are born with this conditioning, time, space, and causation. These are the things. We are born in time, and therefore time becomes the most important factor. We are nowadays talking about time management and all that. It is too late, but we have been warned right from the beginning, thousands of years ago, that our life is at time's mercy. We can't do anything about our life when the appointed time comes. There, we have to simply give up our body. And body is that magical equipment which allows the manifestation of what is all unmanifest in the subtle body, and with the help of this subtle body, it can either reach the world of names and forms, or it can reach the very cause of the world of names and forms. It has either a scope for both the sides. So it can either go to the world and worldliness and get caught up in the net of that, or it can see the cause of the world, source of the world, and go back like to the cause, and there discover himself as his own self as the very cause for the rest of the world. Now this kind of causation, therefore this should be the hunting, the hobby of our intellect. We just observe, but when the question comes, how, why, wherefore, etc., then only this causation process can be activated. We can't just accept the things as they are. We cannot just accept that this happened and that happened. We consider this as anything that happens is cause. It is only an effect of some cause. Therefore, we must discover the cause and encourage that cause, enrich that cause, or discourage the cause according to the effects or the desirable results. So this idea of observing the present as the effect and going back to its cause should be our regular habit of our at the intellectual level, and this will lead us, this particularly our hobby or our lifestyle of causation hunting will lead us to the cause of all causes, and that is the ultimate truth. So this has capacity to lead that. Therefore, in the time and space frame, where it has limitations, we have our life time bound, we are born in time, we are growing in time, we will be aging in time, and we will die in time as far as our physical body is concerned. And there is no possibility of any compromise on this law. First thing. So, kala kridati gacchatyayuhu tadapi na munchatyashavayuhu. In Bhajagovindam Acharyas, we know that the time sports with man, and this sport is not a happy sport. It is a sport like a cat sporting with a rat. It will not kill the rat immediately. It will play with it. When it tries to escape, it will pounce upon it. And like this, the time is playing a fool with us. We should not get fooled by the time. We must be able to manage every minute of our time concept and utilize it for the right purpose. So time space continuum, we know within this we have to try out the causation hunting and reach the main cause, which is not caused, meaning it is not the effect of any cause. At the same time, it is also not causing anything to happen. It is uncaused cause, independent of anything. And below down is the cause, which is called as Maya. And this cause is responsible for the entire further creation. So this we need to understand properly. Therefore, this is the framework within which we have to work our human life for a fruitful purpose. Now, this is one set of limitations. Now, another set of limitation is that we have come through the world of the minerals onwards to the plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and the man. This entire creation can be divided of or consisting of these four types, and these four types are minerals, plant, animals, birds and animals, and man. This is a fourfold creation. Now, one way we have passed down through all these four and now reached a species, or what is called as mammal or man. Now, as man, what we have to do, we must know it. How to complete the sense of evolution that's going on from the inert stone to a living, see Swamiji's adjective for this. From the from the inert stone, then living vegetables, knowing animals, and thinking man. Living vegetables are alive and they live their life on some basic rudimentary sensations. They are not fully conscious of the outer world, and they are rooted in the soil. Therefore, they don't have a freedom of movement. And these trees are therefore barely conscious of the sunlight or the water sources, and accordingly they do their normal work like photosynthesis and all that. So preparing their food. So they are just enough conscious to live their life. So here it is said as living plants. And then knowing animals. Compared to plants, animals have a little more freedom in movement. They are not fixed to one place, and they are more conscious of not only the outer world, but also to some extent the rudimentary emotions like parental care, etc., of the inner world. So they are conscious of the outer world, they are also conscious of the inner world of some basic feelings, so that they can nurture and nurture their offsprings properly with a parental care. All that is possible. So it means that they are now knowing about a little more about this. Knowing is instinctive. Nobody, they don't have to go to school for that. They instinctively know where the food lies. They instinctively know what are their enemies and how to protect. This is a knowledge that is given to them uh, by the nature. They don't have to go to school for that. Therefore, this kind of knowing animals, and then we come to living vegetables, knowing animals, and then thinking man. So, thinking is the only special characteristic that man enjoys as against the rest of the less evolved creatures. So, this faculty, thinking, has two aspects. Since man has got these two aspects in his subtle body, mind and intellect, he has got emotional aspect and he has got rational aspect as well. However, here the thinking, here it means the thinking at the intellectual level and not at the mental level. Thinking at the mental level, which we are already doing, is most dangerous, and we have to lose our all sense of peace and happiness. This, we are thinking in volumes of quantity of thoughts at the mental level. Like a lava, we are suffering due to this kind of thoughts that are flowing in our mind. This kind of thinking is not expected, but a thinking at the intellectual level, which means a sense of discrimination, to discriminate between what is true, what is false, what is real, what is unreal, etc. The discriminating faculty, deciding faculty, judging faculty, etc. For this, we need to think. The thinking will make the things more clear to us if we set on the thinking. So, thinking at the intellectual level is provided to man, and it is not ready to use. It is a faculty which is potentially provided to man. Now, man has to develop this faculty. It is not that anyone born as man is a thinking being. There is a potentiality of his ability to think, and this thinking ability can lead him to the very knowledge on which he is thinking. So the thoughts related to the knowledge will lead finally to the knowledge. This aspect of thinking is very important, and it can take the man to the higher evolutionary ladder, higher rungs of the ladder of evolution. So this aspect is suggested in thinking man. Now it is not taken for granted that thinking man is all are thinking. Thinking is there, but whether at intellectual level or mental level is the first question. If you are thinking at the mental level, you are ruining yourself. If you are thinking at the intellectual level, then definitely there is a scope for that. You will develop the faculty of reasoning. You will develop how to think objectively without involving our self-interest, how to think objectively. So the objectivity in your thinking and the clarity of thinking, then the right direction in which whatever is your purpose for thinking, to go in that right direction, all these will matter the most. And if you go on this, then definitely the present man can be evolved to what Darwin imagined as a superman, whereas we can consider this in our own language, how a man can become a yogi. Yogi is a man of achievement. he has achieved something to be achieved in human life. So this kind of achievement when achieved by the yogi, the life of a man is fulfilled. So now this is in general described as the four possibilities through which a life is evolved: stones, plants, animals, and man. Now there is one Arabian thought which says that I died as a stone and born as a plant. I died as a plant and born as an animal. I died as an animal and born as man. There was no time when I have lost something because of my death. A death has given me a next opportunity to evolve. This is the one of the very good ideas that is suggested here. So death is not the destruction of everything. Death is like the flower withers away when the fruit emerges. So the withering of the flower is not a destruction. It is giving, it is yielding a place to a more evolved status of a fruition. So flowering will lead to the fruition. And that is how every evolutionary stage is a birth of a new thing, whereas the earlier one has to wither away. So this is the idea of dying and going to the new level of evolution. This is one idea. Then we are seeing here that going like this from stone or minerals to plant, animals, and man, it may take millions of years. So we can imagine the same levels in ourselves at our present life. There is a period which we have spent like a stone in our early childhood when we knew nothing, when we are totally a blanket of ignorance with which we are born, and for some time we required some stimulation, some encouragement from others so that we become active, our attention is drawn. So likewise, in the early period, goes in lethargy, inactivity, indolence, laziness, etc. This is as good as a stone life. Now, then we come to the evolved state wherein we are conscious of some basic feelings like plants. So plants have some basic awareness about sunlight, water source, etc. Similarly, the child is developing some bare minimum consciousness about its daily requirements or necessities. This is the next stage. Then it goes to a more evolved state where he becomes conscious of the outer world, and to some extent he becomes conscious of the inner world of likes and dislikes of his mind. And this is the stage where he must be educated to think apart from just feeling and reacting. So thinking has to be introduced to him through a right education. If that is introduced, then his progress as a thinking being, a man as a thinking being, he becomes meaningful. So here the thinking is given a more important as a potential. Thinking as a potential, and it can lead you to the ultimate goal. For this thinking man. Now this process is not a set automatic process that one after the other will follow. It is not at all necessary. In fact, when the thinking man, because of his intellect, he has got the faculty of choice. So he has to choose the right thing. He has a faculty of choice, and always there are two possibilities for him. At every moment, he is at the crossroads. to go by this road or that road. So likewise, at every moment of his life, he is opted a choice and he has to exercise that choice. So he has to exercise the importance of thinking and subject himself to that process of reasonable or logical thinking. So this is very important. This will not happen. He has to choose to that. Therefore, here the self-effort becomes the more important thing. He has to exercise self-effort in improving himself in the faculties of feeling and reasoning. So likewise, here also the general overall limitations are suggested. First limitation is time, space and causation, within which we have to evolve and grow and reach the ultimate. And the second one is that we are going through in our own life at present, we are going through the life of a mineral, that is tamasic life, life of inaction, indolence, inertia. Then the plant life, like a life wherein you are bare minimum conscious of your needs. Then an evolved life, like an animal, where you are more conscious of the outer world and you are conscious of the instincts and impulses, emotions, etc. of your mind. But when it comes to man, man has got intellect in addition to the mind, and therefore this speciality is labeled as thinking man. Now this faculty of thinking is offered to him as potential. It is not ready to use. Therefore, he has to capitalize on this faculty and develop it properly so that with the help of this faculty, he can reach the ultimate goal in life. Now, this is suggested in the sixth paragraph. At the end, it is said that all this has effectively uh, effectively all this has gained in his inner composition a thick layers of animalism and instinct. So over all this period of what we called as evolution, in the bargain, actually what he has done is gathered the animalism. The animals are of instincts and impulses in their mind, and we have gathered only that. So we have inherited the inertia from the minerals. We have inherited the bare minimum consciousness of the surroundings. We have inherited the animal instincts and impulses in our mind. And now we are with a potential of thinking. There is nothing guaranteed. The potential has to be developed, cultivated properly. So with this availability, our immediate concern becomes the purity of mind when we are proceeding to the higher levels of our goal. Now, intellectually, we have understood what is the nature of the self, what is my true nature, what is my true identity. Having understood this without any doubt, without any perversion, then the next question is what I have intellectually understood has to be mentally experienced. And because mind is the medium for experiencing. If I want to experience something, I need a medium for that. If I just want to understand, the intellect is enough. But when I want to experience what I have understood, then mind is the medium for experience, and a right frame of mind is needed to have the right type of experience. So for the experience of our own selfhood, the last word, we need a proper frame of mind. That frame of mind is qualified here as Vishuddha Sattvaha. Vishuddha Sattvaha is a person with a pure and refined mind. So the one who has got the pure mind, refined mind, cultured mind is the one who in his meditation realizes the self. So realizes, experiences. To realize the real is the job with the help of mind. To know and understand the real is the job of our reasoning faculty or thinking faculty, the intellect. So once we have understood intellectually, it is not enough, because that anyone who can subject himself to the listening and reflecting, reading and reflecting, can have this knowledge. By having this knowledge, we are not gaining anything, because it is only intellectual or conceptual knowledge. Now, to make that conceptual knowledge as my experience in life, I need a fit medium of mind. And that kind of fitness of the medium is indicated by the word, the Vishuddha Sattvaha. This now, here the place of meditation is clear at the end, to rub them off. What is that? The layers of animalism and instinct, to rub them off and to purify the antakarana is the process of spiritualism, is another term otherwise called as meditation. So this is the introduction of meditation. The definition of meditation is just indicated here, that rubbing the animalism, the instincts and impulses of the mind are the obstructions that veil our true nature as the self. So even if I know I am the self of the nature of Satchidananda, intellectually very clear, but in fact, in reality, I am living a life of an animal, because the animalism in the mind does not spare me. And the experience being dependent upon the medium of mind, and the mind has already gathered the sense of animalism from the, you can say, from the millions of years before, through various lives. Therefore, now it becomes very important that the meditation is the tool with which we can gain the final achievement. So here it is introduced what the meditation is, and therefore we have discussed the two different definitions of meditation. One definition is applicable to the meditation as upasana, which is the beginning of, as a rule for all the 100% seekers, it is advisable to start their sadhana with upasana. Upasana with upasya may be of their own choice, that by looking at which mind becomes peaceful, quiet, balanced. That is your upasya. And it can be, it should be a pleasing one to the mind. Therefore, it is called as Ishta Devata. So it can be anyone. It can be a book also. It can be only a symbol also. It can be anything that can really lead you to a higher level of evolution. Now, this is the last sentence, therefore, is the beginning of what Swamiji wants to define meditation in this context. This is another definition, that it is a relentless assault on all the negativities, vikritis, vikaras, modifications of the mind. All these vikaras are suggested by the word animalism. There are two words used here. That is animalism on and the instincts. Instincts is the very characteristic of the mind. Mind wants to react instinctively or impulsively. Now, this is the very nature of the mind. Therefore, action reaction, tit for tat. This is what? Pull the dog by tail and it will bark at you. This is the action and reaction at the mental level. All animals react. Man need not react. But invariably, since he has inhered the animal instincts at his mental level, though physically he looks like a man without horns or the tail, in the mind he is just like an animal. There are some people who are hissing like a serpent, who are barking like dogs. So this kind of animalism in their mental behavior is what is to be rubbed off, and it won't go ordinarily. The effective tool for this is here indicated as Dhyayamanaha, one who meditates. Here the meditation is the immediate definition is suggested in the closing statement of the sixth paragraph, and that is called as spiritualism. The real Adhyatmika sadhana, the real spiritual practice starts with meditation, not with Shravanam and Mananam. Shravanam and Mananam is required to acquire knowledge of any kind. Any knowledge you want to acquire, you must listen, read, and then reflect upon that and own up that information as your knowledge. So this is applicable to all fields of endeavor, all fields of knowledge. But when you want to know yourself, a spiritual purpose, then to become what you know is the important job. And this is achieved by the technique of meditation. Therefore, meditation is the technique which drives off all the negativities from our mind and makes the mind as the fit instrument to receive the reality and give me the experience of that reality. So, mind is the fit receptacle of divinity only when it is spotlessly pure. It is called Vishuddha Sattva. Spotlessly, not even a spot of impurity. It is called Vishesha, Vishuddha Sattva. So, Shuddha Sattva. Naturally, the levels of the mental purity also can be graded like that. This is one aspect. And now, Swamiji is proceeding to explain more details about this kind of meditation and how it is effective. So we are going to the seventh paragraph. These are very, very important portions, and we should not miss the link how we have come to this point. Herein, the seventh para, herein we are against the pessimistic belief in the Western philosophy, which hesitates to accept that man is not a helpless victim but a master of his instincts. They, on the other hand, would like to accept that man is a victim as much as any animal of his instincts, and they, the materialistic West, seek to discover in this cozy philosophy a palpable excuse for their indulgent nature and constant wooing of carnal pleasures. In contrast with this, the East heroically declares man is a master of his instincts and his greatness lies in his capacity to release himself from the soul killing chains of instincts. This in the East is not merely a theory, but the seers and the sages of India has literally lived these perfections, and in their victory over their instincts, they had gained the world of godhood. The world of godhood can be otherwise called as Daivi Sampat. Daivi Sampat. Daivasura Sampat Vibhaga Yogo Nama. Is one of the chapter is there on Daivi Sampat. So to counteract these instincts and impulses in the mind, we have to live some good values of life, such as love, kindness, etc. And these positive living of these values will, in the bargain, extinct all these negativities in our mind. Now, having thus compared our Eastern philosophy with the Western thought, Swamiji has in a way exposed the weaknesses. It is not enough that you are highly intelligent and knowledgeable person, and then your weaknesses about your sense pleasures, etc., are excused. This is their idea. It is not so. For seeking the self perfection, even to rule over our own instincts, is also included, and therefore this is the difference between the Western thought and the Eastern thought. This is indicated, and victory over their instincts, they had gained the world of godhood. So the godhood is Daivi Sampatti, and the demoniac or demoniac powers is considered as the Asuri Sampat or Sampatti. So these are the one chapter is dedicated to this topic in Bhagavad Gita, and that will throw us more light for this. Now, Swamiji is proceeding to the main thing is his his meditation as a technique for achieving the final victory. So that how this meditation is working on these negativities in the mind for destroying it, etc., is being uh, concerned, and therefore it is continued in the following paragraphs. Now we take the 8th paragraph. The more we renounce and get over the negativities in us, the more purified we become in our mind and intellect. And the purer the mind, the greater the divinity which that mind comes to reflect. And it is this that is meant here by Jnana Prasada. The dualists have claimed for this a meaning almost amounting to a descent of grace from the Lord. In bringing such a meaning out of this stanza, they had to some extent to crush the mantra into an ugly discord. Now, like Westerners, the weak point of the Westerners' philosophy or psychology, where they consider intellectual knowledge is enough, and that we should understand and accommodate all their mental weaknesses. Here, now in our own schools of philosophy, one school thinks that interprets Jnana Prasada. Prasada is always from the Lord. It is the grace of the Lord. Therefore, they interpret like this, that by the grace of the Lord, one is able to realize the self. So the grace of the Lord is not an appropriate interpretation. All the graces are working within us. And all those 4 graces that we have mentioned earlier in our discussion, I don't know whether you remember them all. Atma Kripa, Isha Kripa, Guru Kripa, and Shastra Kripa. This we have discussed when we were discussing the Shruti, Mother Shruti, between 2 sentences is gracing us. So it is to read between the lines. That time we have discussed this point. So all these kripas are within us only. But all kripas are open to us only when we start with Atma Kripa. Atma Kripa means self-effort. And then the Isha Kripa and Guru Kripa, Shastra Kripa will follow. But it all begins with self-effort. Therefore, this sense of self-effort is killed when you say that the last gain is achieved by the grace of the Lord. It is not like that. The grace of the Lord comes much earlier. The grace of the scripture is the last. And there, only the one who, we can say, diligently pursues with discriminative analysis the search for the self, he alone For him alone, the scriptures grace, and he is able to read between the lines. This is what the final one is. Therefore, there the Jnana Prasadena Vishuddha Sattvaha, the Jnana Prasada is not the grace of the Lord. It is basically a struggle at the level of intellect in its discrimination and a backup by a devoted mind following the footsteps of the discriminating intellect and trying to identify the gains of the intellect so far in searching for the self. Now, this kind of cooperation between mind and intellect is a must. And therefore, we were saying that Jnana Prasada is an understanding of the self we have already gathered with the help of discriminative intellect. This Jnana Prasada. And Vishuddha Sattvaha is the frame of mind that will be able to, when supporting this knowledge, understanding, will be able to give us the experience of the self in our attempt to meditate. So in meditation, we know in our Gita prayer verses, Dhyana shlokas, we know the 9th verse. In this is very, very important verse. Dhyana vasita tadgatena manasa pashyanti yam yoginaha. Yam devadevam yoginaha dhyana vasita tadgatena manasa pashyanti. They are able to see by mind the Lord of Lords. So the mind can see the Lord of Lords. Here it is considered Lord of Lords as the self. So mind can discover and realize the self when it is absorbed in the state of meditation. Dhyanavasthita. So Dhyanavastha is a state of meditation, and when the mind is fully absorbed in that state of meditation, then in that state, the seeker sees the Lord of Lords. Yasya antam na vidussura suraganaha devaya tasmai namaha. Tasmai devaya namaha. Salutations to that Lord of Lords, who is seen by the yogis when their mind is absorbed in the state of meditation. They see it. So pashyanti yam yogina. So this pashyanti, here also it is said, the wording here in the mantra is pashyate. There it is pashyanti. Here it is tam pashyate. Tam atmanam pashyate. So one sees the self when as absolute truth, self as absolute truth, when dhyayamanaha, when he meditates. When he meditates and meditate with what kind of mind? Vishuddha Sattvaha. One who has got the mind which is extremely refined and purified, and the understanding when associated with the mind that is pure, extremely pure, spotlessly pure, then it results in self-realization. So this is the clear understanding of this mantra. But here one school of philosophy has interpreted Jnana Prasad as the grace of the Lord. So Swamiji has also ruled out that possibility in this 8th paragraph. So, sorry, not 8th paragraph. Here we are on the 6, 7, 8. So here it is that it is, and it is this that is meant here by Jnana Prasada. What is that? First statement in the 8th paragraph is most important statement. Thus, the more we renounce and get over the negativities in us, the more purified we become in our mind and intellect. And the purer the mind, the greater the divinity which that mind comes to reflect. So that to reflect the divinity by the mind, we need the mind to be extremely pure. In our discussions on Kaivalya Upanishad, we have referred to this paragraph, special thought. We have given it out as a printout also, the small strip, that whenever the bottom of the lake is pure, free from dirt, the surface must reflect the bright sky. See, this kind of thought, Swamiji's thought was there. So here same thing, the sense is repeated here, that when mind reaches that extreme purity, then it will reflect the divinity as it is. So the like bright, pure, infinite heavens above will be reflected on the surface of the lake, whose bottom is clean of all the dirt and impurities. There are on the on the net, there are photographs of some lakes where even you can see the bottom of the lake clearly, a bluish shade of the water, and you can see the through and through. So in nature also there are such lakes available where you can see the clarity of the bottom. And then the property is that the surface will reflect directly all the glory of the bright sky above. So this is what is given here, that the self or the divinity or the pure awareness will be reflected in our mind the moment the mind becomes spotlessly pure. So this idea was given here in this paragraph. And it is this that is meant here by Jnana Prasada. So the dualists, the Dvaitins, which have argued or claimed that it is the grace of the Lord, is not really applicable. Now we come to the 9th paragraph. When reading Jnana Prasada or Atma Prasada or Sattva Prasada, etc., a true student of Vedanta, striving in the path honestly to follow the eternal footprints of the rishis, should understand it to mean, into inverted commas, the purification gained by his mind intellect equipment through a renunciation of his false values, wrong attachments, delusive vanities, and low animal instincts. These are all impurities of the mind and intellect, our inner equipment called as antakarana. There is an outer equipment, there is an inner equipment. Outer equipment is called as bahikarana, that is our physical body, and inner equipment is called mind and intellect equipment, that is our subtle body. So antakarana is the inner equipment or subtle body, and this subtle body is actually the state of the subtle body can be considered as Jnana Prasada, Atma Prasada, etc. This can be understood properly when the purification gained by this mind intellect equipment through a renunciation of all these negativities is achieved. So the more a mind is redeemed from its psychological aberrations, the more such a mind becomes subtle and pure. A pure mind agitates the least. In the still pool of the mind, a clear reflection of pure awareness comes to play. Realization thereafter is immediate and fruitful. This is giving us a clear vision of the ultimate state of realization. We have already discussed about this pure awareness, infinite objectless awareness, etc., which is at the highest level at present. At the lower level, there is a consciousness and its objects of illumination. And when this lower level, our mind becomes pure enough, clearing all the negativities of the mind. Now in this, here in this paragraph, Swamiji has added a lot in the title of negativities, and here it says all false values. The list of the impurities that are given here, it becomes is the false values, wrong attachments, delusive vanities, and low animal instincts. So they are all, really speaking, goes to different aspects of our inner equipment. So mana, buddhi, ahankar, and chitta. These are the fourfold aspects of our inner equipment. And you will find, if you think in details about this, that these four different levels are indicated here. The renunciation of his all false values, wrong attachments, delusive vanities, and low animal instincts. So the more a mind is redeemed from its psychological aberrations, we have read all this paragraph completely. So here it is the result of, when you say pashyate, here the tam atmanam pashyate dhyayamanaha. So there what he sees exactly. So Atman is available to us finally at our present level of spiritual practice as pure awareness. This is representation of the self in us at present. Moment we have realized this as our nature, the final self-realization is not far. It is immediate and fruitful. So this, all our efforts in the practice is in realizing what we have intellectually understood, is really application of this understanding at the level of mind. So whatever is intellectually understood has to be mentally experienced. This kind of experience is possible only when the mind becomes spotlessly pure. So Vishuddha Sattva. So we can then grade the different levels of mind. So when it is Vishuddha Sattva, then Shuddha Sattva, then Malina Sattva. These are the three levels possible of the Sattvic mind. Malina Sattva is a level common to all seekers, because of which they are called as Jivas. Malina Sattva. Jiva is Malina Sattva. Shiva is Shuddha Sattva. And the Vishuddha Sattva is where the Jiva himself becomes Brahman, the ultimate. So the three levels are immediately. But this is not all. Our mind has created some more lower levels, and instead of Malina Sattva, Malina is impure. It is impure by Rajas and Tamas. So accent on Rajas, accent on Tamas, and both are seesawing between each other, sometimes Rajasic, sometimes Tamasic, like this. These are all impurities contributing to in the Sattva and make the Sattva impure. Therefore, there are various levels of impurity, starting from Tamasic, then Tamo Rajasic, where the Rajas is also added to that, and then coming to Rajasic itself, then pure Rajas, and thereafter it is this Sattva. So the Sattva, again impure Sattva, indicating the presence of Rajas and Tamas. The pure Sattva, indicating an accent or let's say predominance of Sattva over Rajas and Tamas. And then we can say it as Sattvika. And Shuddha Sattva here is the major aspect of our mind is Sattvic. And Tamas and Rajas cannot affect its status. This is basically the Shuddha Sattva. Vishuddha Sattva means leaving no room for any impurity of whatsoever kind. So this means the mind itself has to be cleaned of all the animalism and impulses or instincts which are now at present at the bottom of the lake, like this. And they come up to the surface only when a relative situation comes to have the appeal. Then till then they are at the bottom of the lake. So therefore this we need to clear them off, and this assault, what Swamiji calls it as a relentless assault, this kind of war, fighting down all these low tendencies, false values, etc., is the what is expected out of the meditation here. So this Nididhyasana, what is called here as Nididhyasana, and there only as Dhyanam or Upasana is the basic difference. So there we are learning to meditate on one line of thinking at the exclusion of another, all other dissimilar line of thinking in Upasana, so that we finally come to appreciate our deity as omnipresent, omniscient and omnipotent, and merge our mind with that. With such a powerful mind, actually, till it has not cleared the impurities of the mind which are at the bottom. So though it feels the divinity, the presence of divinity everywhere as his deity, but in himself, in his own inner within, he is still not pure enough. So that the deity which was placed outside as an object of worship, it becomes the very subject as his own self. Now for this, the another type of meditation is required, another technique of meditation is required, which is a deeper contemplation, or which here is called as meditation, but its main job is to clear all the negativities of our mind. So this is mainly insisted here. Jnana prasadena vishuddha sattva tatastu tam pashyate nishkalam dhyayamanaha. So here the accent is given to the mind, which should be extremely pure, spotlessly pure, so that this mind becomes a fit medium to receive the reality. That is, to reflect the reality. That is pure awareness. And this is possible when all the negativities of the mind are cleared through the technique of meditation. So this meditation is mainly meant to clear off all the negativities of the mind. All the negativities are already listed here in the last paragraph. So this is mainly about our portion for the 8th mantra. We are with the last paragraph, we have already covered the portions here. Now, the last statement here is very important statement. I want everyone to be careful, attentive. This statement is, a pure mind agitates the least. First thing. So the impurity is measured in terms of agitations. The pure mind agitates the least. In the still pull of the mind, so first is the mind with least agitation, which can be called as a steady mind. When the steady mind is further stilled, these two levels of mind are importantly reached in meditation. First, make the mind steady, not deflecting, or as it is said here, it is agitation agitates the least, That is called a pure steady mind. So a little agitations means impurity, and absence of agitations is purity of mind. This is first level of steady mind. Sthira and stabda. These are the two different words indicating two different shades. A sthira, a steady mind, is the one which agitates the least. See, when we say agitate the least, even the thought of the self is also an agitation. Because a thought itself means the agitation. It is a disturbance in the essential silence. A thought is a disturbance. If the thought is sattvic, it is the least disturbance. So Swamiji thereby allows us to go on with the contemplation, deeper contemplation upon the nature of the self. But understand that this is the least agitations of the mind. So the sattvic mind has the least agitations, rajasic mind has the maximum agitations, tamasic mind has no agitation, but it is lethargic like a stone. So it won't undertake any activity, much less the meditation and all that. So it is most disqualified mind. So there is no question of tamasic mind. Whatever is necessary tamas for our life is there, but it is not overpowering the rajas and sattva. That was the aspect. The rajasic aspect is agitations. Every thought will bring some agitation. The sattvic thought will bring us the least agitation. And this sattvic thought does not disturb the balance of mind. The mind still remains steady in spite of the thought of the self. Though, technically speaking, every thought is a disturbance in the silence, which is the self. Therefore, here the steady mind is described as the mind with least agitations, first aspect. And when this mind becomes still, still is the word, steady and still. Still means it does not move at all. It has become stilled. So this is second level of mind, and in this level, then mind becomes, here it is said, a clear reflection of pure awareness comes to play. A reflection of pure awareness comes to play. When you use the word play, it has a special meaning. It means through this mind, the endless bliss is experienced. This is a play, the sport. Like a sport, the pure awareness comes to reflect in the mind. So pure awareness by itself, when reflects in our mind, the mind is full of endless joy. This is this particular understanding is most important in the background, where someone says the zero is the ultimate end, and to this there is an answer that when the pure awareness is reflected in our mind becomes full of endless bliss. The sense of endless bliss is that mind finds in itself no lacking at all. The absence of the sense of lacking, and positively speaking, a sense of completeness and fullness abounds the mind. And if this is the condition, then this is otherwise explained here. It comes to play. The reflection has something to play upon the surface of the mind. The reflection is not reflected. Reflected is independent of reflection. But the reflection depends upon the reflected. Pure awareness is reflected in our mind. And the reflection gives us immense joy. And this sense of bliss is the beauty. If you see our prayers, the first prayer, Brahmanandam Parama Sukhadam, this is the first characteristic introduction of the Brahman, otherwise known as Sadguru. So the first identification of Brahman experience in our heart as fullness, completeness, or endless bliss. So this kind of joy is a very, very important thing. Please reflect on this, and we will have some material in our group also to this effect. So here the last sentence is therefore most important. Realization thereafter is immediate and fruitful. So the realization of the real is the self, which is eternal existence and infinite consciousness, Satchit Atma. And this Satchit Atma is Brahman. Therefore, this realization of the self as Brahman will follow immediately the moment one experiences Satchidatma as of the nature of infinite bliss or endless joy. This is the first indication that you are on the right path and you are successful in your meditation. The experience of joy is the first indication of success. If you are coming out of your seat for meditation with lot of irritation of the mind, etc., then understand it is a total failure. After the meditation, the mind must be cheerful in its disposition. So this is the first indication of success in your meditation. Now, here the experience of the successful meditation is conveyed, indicated as the endless bliss, indicated by the term play. Play is like a sport or game, and it is only when basically we are happy that we say, let's play the game. It is not that we are playing so that we will become happy. Game is an expression of our essential joy. When basically we are happy, we will say, oh, today is Sunday, let's play the game. That means the disposition of your mind is that you are full and complete. And to express this fullness and completeness of your mind, it is expressed in your game. Therefore, you play the game. You don't play the game so that you become happy. If someone is playing like that, he will be miserable in the end, because all and through his idea is, as a result of this, I'll be happy. No, we are happily living or playing the game of life. Game of life is not just smooth and easy. It is through lots of ups and downs, but I can happily go through, provided I realize that this endless bliss is my nature. Not that I am going to get something as a result of my work that I will be happy. Happiness is my nature, and this is realized when the mind becomes fully purified, and there we get the experience of the pure awareness. This pure awareness plays in our spotlessly pure mind in the state of meditation as endless bliss. If this is experienced, it is indicative that the realization is not far. Achirat eva. This is a term used by the scripture. Achirat. It will not take long. It is not far. It is just very close. Immediate. Soon you will realize. So this realization is not far. The moment you experience the endless bliss as a result of your purity of mind, in which the pure awareness reflects as endless bliss. So with this, we conclude this 8th mantra. In case there are any questions, please raise the hand.
What is the difference between instinct and vasana? And other question is, the Western people think that man is victim of instinct, and Eastern people say that they are the master of instinct. What is the difference?
Now the first question first.
Yes,
The first question is the difference between.
vasana and instinct.
So vasana is unmanifest and instinct is an immediate expression at the level of mind.
Okay.
Mind expresses in the terms of instincts and impulses which are prompted by the vasanas as a reaction to a given situation. When a given situation is perceived, then it reaches and taps a particular kind of vasanas which are expressed as instincts or impulses, and it is our reaction to the situation. So one is manifest, another is unmanifest. Vasana is unmanifest, instinct is manifest at the mental level and behavior level. Next is the victim of the instinct or impulse or mind or master of instinct. So Western has accepted the weakness of mind as something natural and there is nothing wrong in it. If you are knowledgeable, then if you are mentally weak as a victim of your impulse and instincts, it is acceptable. Whereas our culture says, not that it is not acceptable, you are free to go along with the instincts and impulses, but the real self-mastery is ruling over your instincts and impulses. So we have a systematic discipline where we first curb the instincts at the physical level, to some extent curb the instincts, then control the instincts by educating the mind, and with a full understanding, rule over the instincts. So it's not that we are only making the instincts as uh, exit, but they are under our control. We are the master of instincts. So it is possible for man to rule over the instinct, because unless he rules over the instincts of the mind, he cannot effectively think at the intellectual level. Instincts will pull him back to the animal level. It is not possible to keep the mind instinctive and impulsive and agitating, and you can think on such serious subjects as your own self. We have already discussed this statement. Quieter the mind, brighter the intellect. Therefore, mind needs to be quiet and peaceful. If it is disturbed by instincts and impulses, the intellect cannot function. Therefore, it is a necessity of man to control, curb, control, and rule over the instincts. If we have grown over, we have inherited some animal instincts, we need not continue with that, because we are already on the evolutionary ladder, and therefore the lower rung we have to leave. One leg we have on the higher rung of the ladder of evolution as man, and now the next leg we have to lift from our mental level as animalistic. We have to lift that also and rule over that, have a control over that. Therefore, what is accepted in the West is not really correct. It won't lead them to any progress further. But we have the techniques and methods of controlling the instincts and impulses of the mind, so that in the peace or quiet of the mind, the intellect can function and do its job of penetrating into the realms unknown and making them known. At this moment, self is unknown, not unknowable, but unknown, And to make that known is the job of the intellect. And precondition for that is the mind free from the animalistic instinct. So now we'll conclude with this, with our prayer. यस्य प्रसादादहमेव विष्णुः मय्येव सर्वं परिकल्पितं च इत्थं विजानामि सदात्मरूपं तस्याङ्घ्रिपद्मं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यं तस्याङ्घ्रिपद्मं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम् ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः।